Hi everybody, it's Laura from Green Tree. I know it's been a while since I've done one of these actual food videos, but here we are, and I'm going to try and give you probably a slightly long, but in the same way brief overview of some of the foods you might want to do substitutions for over the holidays. Now, the holidays can be a tricky time because we all have our favorite foods that we love to eat and that we want to share with other people, but they aren't always compatible with everybody else's allergies or needs. So I'm going to talk about some ways you can make substitutions in your tried and true recipes to use those as is, and other ways that you might go about making something entirely new. So first things first, probably some of the most common ones that you'll hear about are people needing to be gluten-free or vegan. So gluten-free stuff specifically doesn't have these two compounds that are found in wheat and related grains called glutenin and gliadin. Basically, when you knead the flour that you make out of a wheat grain or a barley or spelt, you get these stretchy proteins, and that's what gives you all of the nice little holes in a loaf of bread that lets it rise and get that beautiful chewy texture. But for some people, they cause a lot of issues to the digestive tract. So you're going to need to replace it in a lot of your baking. And since Christmas is typically a time for cookies for a lot of people, that can be tricky. Now, one of the things that a lot of people also like to make is cheesecakes. And I'm actually going to sample these today, but you can get these little gluten-free graham crackers, and these make a great base for something like a cheesecake. So this is a case where you can just substitute in one thing and otherwise use your regular tried and true recipe. Other things might be a little bit more complicated. And when you find brand new recipes online, they'll typically call for a mix of a bunch of different kinds of flours. Sometimes that's just not practical. So one of the ones that I've had good luck with and that I've talked to other people who have had really good luck with is the Bob's Red Mill 1-to-1 flour replacer. The reason this works so well is this is a blend of multiple flours and a binder. So if you're going to make your own blend, you need some kind of a binder that's going to give you that stretchiness that you'll get in something that contains gluten. But this guy already has it mixed in. You can see it just looks like traditional flour, and you can go ahead and make your recipe exactly as you would otherwise and substitute this in, and you're golden. So for some things, the easiest way to go is going to be a pre-done mix like this. We also have from Bob's Red Mill, because their gluten-free game is strong, pie crust mix. We've got a pizza mix as well. So depending on what you want to make, you might want a different blend of flours. And if you don't want to buy 6 or 7 different types and mix them together for a recipe and have all these little partial bags sitting around, again, something like this might be the way to go. Another thing you might want to do gluten-free is if you like a crispy, crunchy topping or breaded goodies. We just recently were able to start getting these Ian's gluten-free panko breadcrumbs. These are really nice because they have no wheat or gluten, no milk, no eggs. So not only are these guys going to be gluten-free, but they also are going to be vegan. So you can please multiple people with this particular item. So again, crispy, crunchy, delicious. Try the pre-made breadcrumbs. Another thing you can use is gluten-free crackers. If there's a type of gluten-free cracker that you like, you can just pulse those in a food processor, or if you don't have a food processor, my tried and true method when I lived in an even smaller apartment than now was to take the crackers, throw them in a Ziploc bag, and just roll a rolling pan, or sometimes just smash them with the bottom of a mason jar in the bag to kind of keep them contained. And that works great as a gluten-free breading too, with the bonus that you can just go ahead and serve the leftover crackers if you don't use them all in the breading. So that's kind of a little bit of a gluten-free one. Depends on what you're looking for. If there's a specific recipe that you want to tweak that you don't think was covered in the tips I gave, go ahead and throw that in the comments and we can revisit it later. Now, the other thing I mentioned was vegan, trying to make some of your classic recipes vegan. The first thing that I'm going to suggest, get yourself a really good substitutions cookbook. I am not vegan, but I make a lot of vegan dishes, and I find that they can be just as good as the traditional way. But something like this is hugely helpful. This one is called The Complete Guide to Vegan Food Substitutions. The reason I really like this one is it addresses the primary issue with these substitutes, which is what is this original animal product doing in the recipe? So it's got these great little charts, and I know this will be backwards for you guys, but I'm going to kind of show you anyway, where it'll tell you with each different substitute what that will do in a recipe. So for example, I'm just going to give you a little section here. When to use coconut milk. And a really important point here, they're talking about the kind of coconut milk that comes in a can. Most recipe books that are newer will specify coconut milk or coconut beverage. When they say coconut beverage, they're talking about the kind that you would pour over cereal. When they say coconut milk, they're talking about the kind that comes in a can. It's thick and heavy and has a lot of fat in it. If you're looking at a recipe and you're not sure, if they don't specify in a way where it's very clear from the ingredients list, ask yourself, if I was making this recipe with dairy products, would I use milk or would I use heavy cream? If you would use heavy cream, then you want the kind in a can. If you would just pour in milk like you would pour over cereal, then you want the kind that comes in that box or carton. So this is talking about the kind in the can. So what it says about using coconut milk as an egg replacer. Use 1/4 cup coconut milk per egg. The amount of fat naturally contained in coconut milk replaces the fat found in eggs. Be careful if you're not a fan of coconut flavor because it will be strong. So that's not as true of the kind in the carton. That's another clue that they're talking about the kind in a can. But they're explaining to you why this particular substitute works in this particular recipe. So if you're using it and you want that fatty, unctuous texture that you get from using a whole egg, that's the time you might want to use canned coconut milk. Now, if you were doing something like using your eggs in a recipe that makes a cake and you need it to get fluffy, those eggs are acting as a leavening agent. They're reacting with something else in the ingredients in order to make it rise. In a case like that, you need something acidic. You would be using something like a vegan buttermilk substitute or a sweeter vinegar, like an apple cider vinegar. There's something called wacky cake, if you've never tried it, but it's basically a cake that is risen by a mixture of baking soda, baking powder, and vinegar, and there's no eggs in it at all. So that's the advantage of a book like this. It will help you understand why you're using a particular substitute in a particular recipe, and then you'll know what's going to be your best alternative. So I'm just going to talk about a couple of the things that you can use that are ready to grab. Cream cheese. There are so many great non-dairy cream cheeses now. It's kind of crazy. So this is a Daiya one. We also have I believe, I'm looking at the case right now. We also have Tofutti and Miyoko currently. So these can just be subbed in, and you can do things like cheesecakes. You can do thick, creamy dips. You can make spreads and appetizer plates with something like this. Now, vegan cheese, if you haven't had it in a while, is getting much tastier. This is one of my favorites. So this is the feta from BioLife. It really tastes like a goat milk or a sheep milk feta. It's softer than a traditional feta, but you can just slice it down the middle and cut it into cubes and sprinkle it into anything just the way that you would crumbled feta. If you want a crumblier texture, try freezing and thawing it and then breaking it up. You can also do that with blocks of tofu. Press, freeze, and then crumble, and you'll get a texture that's going to be a lot more like a ricotta or a feta than you would if you just took the block and sliced it up. Okay. Another thing you can use when you're calling for something that's got a little bit of tanginess, instead of, say, sour cream, you can actually use a vegan yogurt. So Kite Hill is a tasty brand. This is a vanilla one. It's an almond based, and you can go ahead and use this in a sweet recipe. If you're doing a savory recipe, you'd want to get an unsweetened, like the Forager cashew milk yogurt that we carry. And you could just go ahead and substitute that in for things that call for sour cream, and then they would be vegan. They're also the advantage of being great for the lactose intolerant. So if you're looking for something for a person who's not necessarily vegan or vegetarian but can't do dairy, we've got a lot of options for them too. Another one that's really amazing, Miyoko butter. This stuff, I don't even know how to describe it. It tastes like a grass-fed butter to me. I do eat dairy products, but I would get this anyway just because it's so tasty. It's really improving. They're learning how to culture non-dairy replacers in a way that makes them so similar to the dairy products that they're standing in for, to the point where you might choose them just because you like how they taste. So those are a few options if you're replacing dairy products. And again, one other tip, if you're going to use a coconut beverage, for example, or a soy beverage or an almond beverage, think about what you're making. Is it savory? Are you making an Alfredo sauce? Choose unsweetened. Is it a baked good? Is it a cookie? Is it a cake? Then it's totally fine to use original or vanilla. But that flavor is going to tweak your finished recipe. I can tell you this the hard way from not reading the label close enough and ending up making potato soup with a vanilla soy milk, I believe it was. We ate it anyway, but it was not quite right. So be careful that you know what the finished product you're aiming for is. You can typically use the unsweetened varieties in recipes that will ultimately be sweet because there's other sugar there. So if you're not sure what all you will be making with your substitute, opt for the unflavored or the unsweetened, and you're probably in a much safer place. Okay, let's dive in a little bit deeper here. If you're feeling like you really want to do some cooking, Aquafaba. So garbanzo beans or chickpeas, when they're canned like this, have this kind of thick liquid in them. You can use other beans, but this is the one that really works the best. When you drain them, instead of just pouring that off, save it. Look up Aquafaba recipes. It's kind of crazy what you can do with it. You can make meringues with this stuff. So if you're looking for a unique egg replacer that has some really fantastic properties and frankly tastes really good in the finished product, that's one to look up. Again, that's Aquafaba. Okay, another thing that you might find is people with allergies. There are some great brands that focus on allergen-free products. One example would be the Enjoy Life brand. So these chocolate chips are free of all of the major allergens. So they have the bonus of being both gluten-free and vegan and not having any nuts in them, which is another really common allergy. They also taste just like regular chocolate chips, so you don't have to sacrifice any flavor. So sometimes the key is just getting these ready to rock things that are just without all of the problematic ingredients. Then you might have somebody with more specialized needs, and you're not only going to have to make dinner. So let's say you have somebody who's following a diet that has very few processed ingredients like grains and sugars in it. Maybe they're paleo or keto and doing something like that, or diabetic and they just can't have a lot of added sugars. We've got some really interesting things for them too. So this right here is magic syrup. This is made by a company called Birch Benders, and this is a paleo syrup. It actually has, it's hard for you to see this on here because it's backwards, but it is in a 2 tablespoon serving, 0 calories. All of the calories in regular maple syrup are coming from the sugar, and this just doesn't work that way. It's a monk fruit based syrup. I tried it. It's actually pretty tasty. I'm going to put this out by our coffee station, this bottle, so if you're in the next couple days, you can try this and see what you think of it as a sweetener. It smells like maple syrup. It really has, there's a kind of almost fruitiness to it, which makes sense because it's from monk fruit, and then the finish is really mapley. So if you're looking for something that you can serve as a sweet treat for people who are sensitive to or avoiding sugar, this is definitely a good option. We also carry some more traditional replacers like xylitol and erythritol. Again, I think I've said this on videos before, but make sure that if something has xylitol in it, your dogs don't get a hold of it. It's really bad for dogs. Fine for people, not so good for dogs. Another thing we have is, this is fairly new, we have a keto pancake mix. So this is a thing you could have as a breakfast combo. You know, serve some scrambled eggs or a vegan egg replacer. We actually have Just Scramble on the shelf. And you could have a breakfast that's going to be fine for all of your guests. It requires a little extra step of picking up a couple of special ingredients, but beyond that, you're going to make it the same way as you would otherwise. So it doesn't have to be difficult to make sure that everybody has something that they can enjoy while they're entertaining. And if you have any special needs, you can always bring it with you when you're traveling, because it comes in a nice little solid package, resealable and everything, and you can have an option there for you that's going to be handy when other people are indulging in stuff that doesn't agree with you. So those are a few examples of different substitutions, things you can work in, issues you might have to work around or with at the holidays. Again, if you have specific recipe questions, throw them in the comments, and myself or one of our other staff members who knows about these things will get back to you with suggestions. But we understand that it's possible not everybody may want to do this cooking themselves, especially if you're not familiar with some of these issues. That's why we have a catering menu. So we can take orders for any of the things in the menu, and we're also willing to entertain special requests. It might take us a little longer for those if we have to get any specific ingredients we don't already have in the store, but there's a lot that we can accommodate on fairly quick notice. Now, our cutoff for orders for Christmas, so for a Tuesday pickup, is going to be Sunday. So this upcoming Sunday. Of course, I don't know off the top of my head what the date of that is. I think the 21st, I believe. So if you order by Sunday afternoon, early evening, we can make you a gluten-free pumpkin pie. We can make you a vegan fruitcake. We can do these things. If you don't feel like you have the space or the time or the know-how, we are there for you. There's quite a range of things too. I mean, we can get you covered from breakfast to dinner to dessert. So just let us know if there's anything you're looking for. Now, for the dairy lovers among us, this is something we haven't really done before, but I want to throw this out there. This year, we can actually order you whole cheese wheels. There are a lot of different types that we can get, ranging from little tiny goat cheese wheels up to great big Parmesan and Manchego wheels, and those are the same deadline. If you're curious about those, get a hold of us, place your order by Sunday afternoon or evening, and we can get you those. That's a Christmas present that I don't think many people are going to turn down. I mean, if somebody offers me a wheel of cheese, I will say, great, let's eat it. So again, if you don't want to do that cooking, or if you're looking for a special gift, get a hold of us. We can take care of that. In the meantime, I've got my guide handy. Throw me your questions. I'll be happy to see them. And I'll be down here sampling some delicious vegan cookie dough dip. If you want to have a snack in your afternoon, come say hi and we can talk about it in person. In the meantime, have a beautiful day, and I will see you guys later. Bye-bye.